differently do not equal a nest. So, and the better you arrange them, the better the communication is, much like letters. I can remove I can remove the vowels from the sentence, all men are created equal, right? I can remove the vowels from that and we can still communicate with it. So putting in the vowels, so are the vowels needed, or they just make it, is it important to have them there? It's just used for error correction, but we definitely prefer them. So in a real way, yeah, nests and sentences are instruments of communication between the two entities that are using them. So there's your specified complexity.
I only think you would be able to remove the vowels and communicate with people who are already so familiar with the English language that they would put them there in their minds. And I've done that before, those kind of tests. But it would destroy the communication function. I mean, the only instance where it wouldn't would be where people imagine the vowels there because they're so used to seeing them, and in that case, they've just repaired the sentence for you. But I am going to have to think about, because I know that a bird's nest is not an example of specified complexity. At least I think that it's not. Let me not say that I know it's not. But either way, if we saw a bird's nest in a tree, I think that had we not seen any birds, we would recognize that this nest is a peculiar thing. It's a peculiar kind of setup that trees don't do on their own. Trees don't gather their sticks into circular bundles, or trees don't make bowls out of their own twigs and suspend those bowls in the air on branches. And so, perhaps there's some design inference there. I mean, we know that birds' nests are designed already by birds, but maybe I'm wrong about it not having specified complexity. But the argument is that when specified complexity is noticed, there is a design inference behind it, and perhaps that applies to the nest of a bird. But as it is now, before I chew on it, I don't.
Yeah, fair enough. It's I am totally happy to leave us both thinking about.
Yeah, it's fun to think about for sure.
I didn't get to hear all that, but good conversation, guys.
And I'll
if I say one quick thing.
Oh, go ahead.
If I say one quick thing before we drop this topic, I would say biscuits really quick. And here's something you think about. It sounded like what you're describing is recognizing things by comparing things that are known to be designed, known not to be designed, not by any type of complexity. We can leave it at that, and you can think about that.
And I'd just like to point out Malk's great comment of the ship of Theseus nest, or nest of Theseus, for removing a stick and replacing it with another stick. So that was a nice thing. Thanks.
What was that game? What was that game people used to play where maybe they still play it in different versions now, but they would have this thing of sticks, and you would pull one stick. Each person was pulling one stick. Yeah. But did they have one before that with like sticks before that became popular?
Pick up sticks. I think it was the one before that. There's also one with just sticks, like an ice cube thing. Yeah, I remember that. Like there were crystal things. Yeah. It's been a fun little conversation this morning. This has made the morning go fast. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I missed the beginning. What time did you start it?
About 90 minutes ago, I think, or so.
Yeah, about that. But then,
you don't just need 3D printing. You need excellent quality, quick delivery, and the best quotes from industry.
So Elon Musk
recently. I don't know.
is willing to pay you $10 million, Rebecca.
What they say
to write-
is that for the theists that tries to say that some things look designed, some things don't look designed, and we know the contrast between those, that there might be a problem from the standpoint of if God created the universe, then he designed everything. So everything designed, the sands designed, everything is designed, not only the human eye, also just garbage is designed as well. So then how do we actually then infer anything if everything is designed?
Well, you get into the problem of everything's designed and you have no way to. You don't have anything non-designed, so there's no way to compare or contrast anything.
Yeah, so it kind of like it makes the argument problematic that we're saying, oh, look at the DNA, or look at maybe something, the universe, something like that. Something must have designed it because it looks designed like. But if theism is true, then that actually damages that argument actually, because however chaotic anything is, it is designed. So the sign.
Yeah, I think that video is a good video, and it makes the point, especially at the end when what she says at the end. I don't want to spoil it. No, not everybody's seen it.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how any theist would respond to that.
Yeah, so I think that the fact that the universe appears to be designed, to at least the layman, is relatively uncontroversial. Like Richard Dawkins said, he said that Darwin made it possible for the first time to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist. What he meant by that was that Darwin showed that nature could mimic a designer. Things look designed for a purpose because nature has spent millions of years only choosing, for replication, those species which were, strong enough to outlast the other ones, and so that mimics a designer. I think Francis Crick said that biologists must always keep in mind that what they're seeing is not designed but rather evolved. Like that, it's hard. Like especially when you get down into cell biology, and things just really look like there's molecular machinery in cells, and it looks like little factories. It's kind of creepy to watch sometimes when you're high. But so the fact that it appears to be designed is not something that's typically thought of as a controversial thing. The argument now is, are there some elements which are, or does it just have that appearance? But yeah,
I would agree with that. I mean, I think in general we're getting better at determining things about reality in general. It's like at one time people thought the sun went around the earth, and now if we didn't know anything about, if we knew everything we knew now but never been into space, now we might not jump to that conclusion just because we've gotten better at determining what reality is, or we got better at doing science.
Can I go back to a statement that the complexity part there, and that we're looking at that? Is this another case of, like, right now, we have people today that look at the pyramids of ancient Egypt and go, I can't imagine how humans could have built this. And they look at it and go, there's no way, this is so big and so large. I simply can't imagine it happening that way. It must have been something outside humans that did it. And so we see that now, and we have a large number of people that go, no, I can build rock things. I can see where they quarried it. We have multiple theories on how these pyramids were built. Even if we don't have the exact records, we have like 5 or 6 different techniques that could have been used. We just don't know which one, but we're working on it, and we're still doing research into exactly how they were made, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that most people can look at or a lot of people can look and go, I don't understand how this could have possibly happened. Therefore, it must have been an external force and not humans. Isn't that analogous to, I look at a complexity on a cellular level and go, I can't imagine how this could have come to be by nature, so it must have been an external developer. It must have been an external creator that caused this.
I think anybody that jumps to a therefore that quickly is not doing themselves or anyone else any favors. But on the same token, I would say that anyone who assumes that a design hypothesis is ridiculous isn't following along closely enough, and I think that they're kind of being biased in their own way. We shouldn't. I don't think we should roll our eyes at any hypothesis as large and strange as the universe that we inhabit is. Richard Dawkins even said in an interview one time. I just wanted to land this real quick. He said that he was sympathetic to direct panspermia as a result of looking in the cell, right? He said that in a interview with Ben Stein. Of course, Richard Dawkins thought that the intelligent design movement was ridiculous as an outspoken atheist, but he said that an interesting idea is that aliens may have seeded us on this planet and or seeded life on the planet, and he said that you might find evidence of that if you look within the DNA molecules and within cells. Right. It was something really interesting to hear him say, because he's anti-intelligent design, but he says
that's not a design.
He's sympathetic to the idea. Well, that would be a design, yeah.
That wouldn't be a design. That's not a design.
No, yeah, it is.
Okay, so let me just back up to
there would be just as much a design inference as there would in simulation theory, for instance.
So no, but let's first off, I'll come back to that in a minute. But the reason that I push back on intelligent design at all, and so even panspermia, you could still just back it up a generation and say from another planet we had to do all this stuff. So we just need more time. That's all I would be saying. But my question would be what is the mechanism for design? So what are we doing? Is it the case, like if we're simulation theory, okay, then we're just running at a computer program, and sure, we started yesterday at 5 p.m. and we just are here. But if it's the case that we are actually going with what we see, I would, and like what we can measure, what is the mechanism for design? Like what's actually doing what's moving the molecules into place? How are they pushed around? Like what is that? What's the mechanism? Because that's what I'm missing.
Well, I mean, two answers here. First of all, when you make a design inference, the question of how becomes a completely separate question, right? So if I see a boot print on the moon, how did intelligence get to the moon is a different question than was there intelligence here, right? And so to depart from one question and to go to the next is fine, so long as we recognize that that's what we've done.
No. If I see a boot print, hold up. If I see a boot print on the moon, you'd better believe the question is, okay, either there was a human here with a boot, and how would that happen? Well, they'd have to have a rocket that got here. Is that physically possible?
You wouldn't say human unless you're familiar with humans, right? I assume if you're on the moon and you don't know about the first moon landing, you're probably not a human. So if I'm an alien,
I might not even recognize a boot print.
Well, I mean, sure, you might not, but you would notice the vast difference in that structure. You might notice the flag. So if I were an alien species that's familiar with Earth, right, and I go and I notice there's a boot print on the moon and an American flag, and I've been spying on America, let's say, I could say, wow, how did the humans do that? You know, without denying for an instant that humans did it. Right.
Right, but I could. Right. The trick is there. I could
to do that thing.
Right, but the thing is, I would see a physical thing, and I'd say, well, I know if I push my hand into this dirt, it makes an imprint. Okay, so that's how the dirt got moved. Something pushed it. Okay, so what could have brought the hand here? Well, if the person was in a suit to keep pressure. Okay, I can keep backing up in the how did this happen. So I am asking from a design point of view.
You really can't, though. I mean, if you
no, I can have a hypothesis.
American flag.
Yes.
Well, sure, but I mean, I just want to get you to see that these are different questions. Was there intelligence here is different than how did the intelligence manage it?
So yes, I understand.
Is different than intelligence here.
I understand those are different questions. I truly do. However, in this case, if I saw, let's say it wasn't a full boot print, it was like the tip of a boot print kind of thing, just the outline of a semicircle. And that's what I saw. And the alien said, "Aha, this is a boot print." And I said, "Look, all you see is half circle. There's any number. This seems like very possible. It's just random. Can you tell me how you think this circle would have formed?" And okay, here's a physical process that can get me there. That raises the probability that it is actually an intelligently designed blueprint there. So it raises my confidence in, yes, this could be the case. If you have a mechanism you can point at. So it is a different question, but it serves to answer the question of, is it random or not? If you can show, here's the mechanism that makes it not random.
I agree. But in my scenario, you couldn't do that. I mean, so there are scenarios, I'm sure you'd agree, in which you could notice that there was enough intelligence, there was enough evidence for intelligence to assume intelligence with a high degree of accuracy and yet not be able to derive from the conclusion that there is intelligence how the intelligence accomplished the feat that you're observing.
No, I do not agree. I believe there's if I see intelligence, I don't know exactly the process how, but I can come up with a process how. So there might be 10,000 methods to get me to the same result, and I don't know which one the actual designer took, but I have 10,000 different ways that happen, and I should be able to come up with one other mechanism of doing that.
Right, but the fact that you can come up with 10,000 doesn't mean that you have any idea which one, if any of those 10,000, that
I agree.
You. So you could
I
have
agree.
10,000 wrong answers.
I'm just asking for, right? No, I agree. I'm just looking for one. Right, here is the question. That was the intelligent designer. What is the one?
What is the one what?
How, give me a mechanism that intelligent design works with.
One mechanism that intelligent design works with? I guess I'm not understanding.
So there is something that made the DNA. So if we're saying DNA is intelligently designed, then something moved the molecules into position to form that DNA. So what moved the molecules? How did the molecules move? Like, was it electromagnetic forces? Is there energy being pushed around? Was it space being warped? What moved? What is the mechanism that would intelligently craft this DNA?
Well, all of those things kind of assume necessity. I myself am I'm an idealist, and so I think that mind is fundamental, and not emergent. And so, if mind and consciousness is fundamental, then certain of the phenomena that we see in molecular life might just be arranged by mind. I know that this particular sequence-specific string of characters that's coming out of my mouth right now that you're interpreting as my speech is being moved by mind. And I think that your responses to me are being moved by mind. And so we know that.
I don't know, I'm fairly mindless on occasion. Yeah, no, I hear you. But that's one mind in one brain, physical brain, talking to another mind in a physical brain. So I can actually go through and we can look at electrochemical signals that are propagating from one neural set to another neural set. And we don't know exactly how of them, but we can say, look, there's probably a mechanism where there's a little feedback loop that's going through there that's doing these from the ear to the brain. Like, for example, I could do right now, you have the ability to control your own breath. You can actually stop it if you wanted to and keep going. And I will bet there's a bunch of people, right as I said that held their breaths. So that is you had a feedback loop of you were prompted to do this and you did it to try it and you kept going. So yes, we know that this is how minds work and how brains operate. We can't replicate them yet. This goes to your point of I don't know how the humans got to the moon, but we have several mechanisms that were worth exploring and there doesn't seem to be anything aphysical to it at this point. But what I'm
There doesn't seem
going
to
for
be
though
anything
is
aphysical to mind.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that the mind seems aphysical to a lot of cognitive scientists. My favorite one being Don Hoffman. I bring him up all the time.
Okay, so is the program, just to confirm this, if I'm on a cell phone right now, is the program it's running aphysical?
I'm not sure. I don't know about programming. I'm too dense. I'm
Okay.
afraid.
All right. So, but what I'm saying is that there is. If I went and asked where is this program in this phone, it would be very difficult to find the program. This would be a very hard thing to find, and especially while it is running and doing all this other stuff. But I do know if I break this phone, this program stops on my phone. It does no longer work. So, in a sense, it requires the physical to keep moving, even if it's aphysical in our conceptual understanding. I can totally say my concept of it is aphysical, but it is running on a physical substrate. If we wanted to paint the brain or the mind as those two things, totally fine.
Well, I mean, consciousness, I think, is a non-computational thing.
Okay.
And I think Roger Penrose, who's not famous for consciousness studies, is working with a beautiful team right now who they're talking about the non-computational nature of consciousness, that the cerebellum has, I think, 100 billion neurons, whereas the cerebrum has 20 billion. So a lot more neuroactivity in the cerebellum. And we know that the cerebellum is entirely unconscious, right? So when you play Bach on the piano, it tends to not be a conscious thing. Once you memorize the piano and memorize that Bach piece to a certain extent, it's not conscious behavior anymore that's causing you to play out that symphony. It's all muscle memory, and so much of what we do goes on in the cerebellum. I think that that's just kind of another small puzzle in the kind of grand design. But I mean, I study people like Andrew Vandal, who I brought up, who was born with only a brainstem, an cyst on his brainstem, so that his cerebellum and cerebrum never formed. So all he had was liquid in his brain. He lived till age 9. He watched the Disney Channel and laughed. He had a vastly different experience than any of us who have a cerebrum and cerebellum. But the idea that mind and brain, or that mind somehow is emergent from brains because of a few neural correlates, it to me is not convincing.
How about the fact that if I put a screwdriver through your brain, your mind stops?
Maybe not. I mean, people have survived something like that. Let's go with a bullet.
A bullet, yes, or incinerate it, or cut off your head, or any of those things. Your mind stops.
So if you shoot me in the head, the likelihood of me dying is very, very high. But there have been people who have had brainstem strokes, for instance, who get what's called locked-in syndrome. And and locked-in syndrome, you're fully conscious, but you sometimes can move your eyes, and often you can blink. But other than that, you're in a completely vegetative state.
Well, but on the other side of that, you have people who have had strokes whose entire personalities change afterwards and are not the same person they were before. So it seems like physical damage changes the personality. It seems like physical damage changes memory. It seems like physical damage, it seems like I can make your consciousness go away briefly by giving you a drug. You do it every night when you go to sleep. So it seems a very physical thing in every other way. And I don't have any examples of a mind without a physical substrate, but I have tons of examples of a physical substrate without a mind. So like a brain on a cadaver table is not doing anything, and there's a physical substrate there. So there feels to be something where one is dependent on the other, but the other is not really dependent on the first. So do you have an example of a mind without a brain?
Do I have an example of a mind without a brain? I think God would be a mind without a brain.
Do you have an example? Oh, great. Where is it?
Where? I mean, where is just if you're talking about space is just a data compression tool that we make up because we're evolved entities. There's no where in
where is it? Okay, so that's fine.
There's nowhere.
Okay, there's nowhere. Okay, what do I point to? So what do I point to? So what do I point to or touch to get a reaction from the mind of God?
Anything.
Anything.
I think.
So the table is the mind of God. So anything. So the table is the mind of God, and that's the experience.
Now you're changing the suggestion. Now you're saying.
No, you said anywhere.
God. That wasn't.
Yes.
No, you're changing your statement from what you suggested.
Well, you said no. So yeah, because you said I couldn't say where, so I dropped it. I said what do I have to touch? Because I tried to change it from where.
Well, you didn't say what do I have to touch the mind of God. You said something a little bit more complex than that, which made me say anything. But my belief is that on a fundamental level, I mean, what the Bible says is that God breathed into Adam. So on a fundamental level, every human being is God breath, essentially, right? So when we get down to our essence, there's nothing about us fundamentally that's different from what God is.
So we're all God.
Yes. We're having a dissociated experience.
Well, I mean, I think the key to the question is a known example of a mind without a brain. And I would say God's not a known example.
God is a known example to the vast majority of the planet. I mean, God's not a known example to atheists, let's say.
Well, no,
that's like
I would say
you
can claim. I would say he's not a known example. You just claim he is.
Well, if you were a known example, you wouldn't have faith, for example, right? I mean, faith wouldn't be there. It's not the sky is not a known example of up, like so like where like the sky up there, stars, those are things where we can all point to and go, look, there it is. So that would be a known example to lots of people. But what's a known example to lots of people of this? Because otherwise, there wouldn't be atheists if it was an obvious known example.
No, I mean, I think when you ask a layman, right, someone who hasn't studied philosophy at all, how do you know God exists? One of the baby answers that you'll get is, well, who created everything? Right? People will go to that, which is it's an elliptical argument. It has a hidden premise and a hidden conclusion, but you know what people are trying to say when they suggest that. Who made everything? And it is legitimate as often as it's said, and maybe as sick as atheists are of hearing that. It is a legitimate point to be made there, saying, well, what started everything? When I say God, I'm appealing to the uncaused cause, the unmoved mover. And then, if you're willing to kind of get into that dialogue, then you realize that there is not, at least in my opinion, actual infinites. Actual infinites outside of set theory are a paradox, which is...
Wait. Well, hold on. If what you're saying is true, there's a point where if I go, what happened before this, that I'm not allowed to ask, right? There's be a point where I'd say, well, what happened before that? And if what you're saying is correct, I'm not allowed to ask that question at some point. So how do I know I've reached that point where I'm not allowed to ask what came before?
Well, I mean, I think you'd have to ask a physicist. The paradigm in cosmology right now is Big Bang cosmology. So some of them might say something like 13.7 billion years.
No. That's not what their paradigm is currently, right? So that is the start of all. Basically, you can't have information that transferred before that point. That doesn't mean there wasn't a before that point. So, for example, the Penroses, like as mentioned, Penrose, the conformal cyclic cosmology is an example of that, exactly continuing on from well before that. So we actually do have a before the Big Bang in several models. So
well, I think you have to be careful. You have to be careful with the term "we" there, because cyclical models and vacuum fluctuation models are not paradigmatic, though they are really strong and explain a lot of the data. The only paradigm that I'm aware of is Big Bang cosmology. So though those things work, they're not the cosmological paradigm, unless I'm off.
No, what I'm saying is the statement of we know that everything, like there couldn't have been a before, it was a singularity. It's no longer a singularity, right? I mean, they are now down to I believe it's 2 meters in size, is basically what the size of the, like, what we can get back to as quote unquote the singularity. So, like, it's not the case that we have a point of infinitely dense matter anymore. That's not the current thinking in cosmology. So there's just a point where we can't go before.
Say again, Harold. What'd you say?
It was just about like the size. Isn't it Planck length? That's the
no.
About the
It's
spectrum.
about no. It's Planck time, yes, but it was about 2 meters in size.
Yeah, but you could also express length if you know the time.
I understand it was Planck time, but at Planck time, the universe was not Planck length.
Fair enough. I probably don't know too much about.
The universe would have had to have been Planck length at Planck time.
No.
Because space and time don't operate without one another. So Planck time would be a descriptor for something.
Yes, it's like there's an imaginary point before that of 0 time, and then there's Planck time away from that, which is how far, like, which would be Planck time since the imaginary 0 point, which is basically we can't do any physics before Planck time away from the 0. Now the question is, could we go back?
The fact that we can't do any physics doesn't mean there isn't any physics.
Right. Exactly. I think that was my next statement. Yes, 100% agree. But that goes in. And just to get away from the cosmology discussion, which I am no close to an expert on this, so I'm talking out of my ass in a lot of these points. So I'm just going to stop. But the point I was bringing up though is, if you say there's no such like this, there has to be an unmoved mover. What you're saying is, there's going to be a point where you're not allowed to ask what came before that. That's what that comes along with it. There is a point where you say you're not allowed to ask. There can't be a theory. It has to be this.
No,
because otherwise
you're always going to be allowed to ask. The thing is that the answer is going to be nothing at some point, and so even.
If it's nothing at some point, you can't ask before that.
That's right. So what I was talking about with I always bring up Nima Arkani Hamed, who said, space-time is doomed. If you listen to his lectures, he talks about emergence all the time. And this is the new paradigm since the holographic principle was evidenced in 2017. Space and time are not fundamental. And so at the Large Hadron Collider, high-energy physicists are working on the scattering amplitudes and the amplituhedron. These are like geometric shapes that they're supposing have some mathematical relation to emergent properties like space and time. But physicists who are chasing what is fundamental are looking for something spaceless, timeless, immaterial. And I think God or some consciousness is a fantastic candidate for something like that, especially because
that's not how
we're working at the
science
same
works.
time of. That's not what.
That's not how science works. He says science is looking for something that's spaceless, timeless. That's not how science works. Science doesn't have a conclusion and just look for that conclusion. I mean, that's not.
No. I think you might have misunderstood me. Scientists, high energy physicists, have come to the conclusion that space and time are not fundamental. And that when Leonard Susskind was at the World Science Festival, he said to the auditorium, "This entire auditorium is explainable in pixels, not voxels, right? Pixels, flat two-dimensional space, right?" And it's a crazy paradigm-shifting thing that they're finding. So if space and time are not fundamental, and you're looking for what is fundamental, you have to abandon spatio-temporal causes, right? So I'm not saying that scientists are leaving out any possible conclusions. They're figuring out that space and time themselves are emergent. And so the thing that is the cause, the antecedent, is going to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial. And from where I'm sitting, conscious. I think consciousness makes a ton of sense.
I don't know if space-time is really what means what you think it means. Maybe James or someone else can correct me, but I don't think. And we're talking about space and time. I think saying space and time is different than saying space-time, and also time in this universe. Even if there might be time in another universe or space in another universe, but it might be different than the time or space in this universe.
Yeah, multiple universes hasn't been proven. There might be multiple universes. The multiple worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics it's not the favorite among physicists. The Copenhagen interpretation is the favorite amongst physicists, but people with many worlds interpretations would say that. There's no evidence for it, though, and nor will there probably ever be.
What I'm saying is, you claim that scientists or that popular thing is they think there's something spaceless and timeless. I think that's false.
Can you give me a name of a high energy physicist that says otherwise? I mean, even Sean Carroll, who's an out atheist, he actually used the term entities on his interview with Big Think. And of course, he doesn't mean a conscious entity like God, but he said, yeah, spaceless, timeless entities are more fundamental than.
I never hear any scientists say that. I never hear any scientists say that.
How long have you been studying this topic? I mean, I can send you a link right now to a speech at Princeton from Nima Arkani Hamed that's titled "Space-Time is Doomed," and you can watch it. He's a really good teacher.
Yeah, I mean, if you could post in the link, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I want to include other people in the room. I know this room is kind of small, but we lost Scott. I was wanting to hear from Scott. Adishana, I hope I didn't butcher your name. Feel free to chime in and add to the topic if you feel like it.
Oh, Adeshina is the name, good brother. Thank you. I was listening just to get my bearings on where the room direction was going as it relates to the understanding of atheism versus theism. I was actually in a moment of just taking the liberty of defining the word theist for myself. And it says here on Google, a person who believes in the existence of a god or gods, specifically of a creator who intervenes in the universe, versus the atheist definition.
That if you're excited by the content of this talk, one of the true heroes of the subject is right here at Slack. Lance Dixon, he's sitting right there. And so if you have any questions, you should ask Lance.
Conversation, from what I understand, the fundamental principles of space-time, especially how, I believe it was Jason who was just saying that space and time are different than space-time, and in how, I guess, where that leads the argument based on the principles of the room setting and on how it relates to space and time temporality, if you will, temporality. I've thought about it for a moment. I was like, what is space-time to me? And I'm looking down at a wooden table, and I said, I guess space is everything from where my conscious singularity mind is, and out throughout the entire universe, where we draw that first gray line, where time is relative to me as a human being from a solar point of view. So in a different galaxy necessarily, with a different, I guess, center star, you would most certainly experience what you would consider to be time, even dependent on what dimension or what visible plane that entity operates off of. Their conception of space and time, from like let's say if they could see in infrared or gamma rays, that's what they could see in. Even their understanding of space would be relative. Of course, also their vibration of the atoms, as someone was mentioning about the Hadron Collider in Soren, and the particles that they're working on and the scientific inquiries that they're understanding. So I guess for me personally, as an individual with a backbone in the Judeo-Christian a religion, but who also appreciates the principles of science, understanding, and the quest for knowledge. I would venture to say that the Judeo-Christian God may be, I guess, short-sighted in the pantheons of gods throughout the universe who experience space and time and the manipulation of energies, if you will. Because as someone was saying, in space-time, once you can break the understanding of space-time and temporality, a whole new level of sciences become available, which, by the way, I would venture to say this is the difference in someone who would consider themselves a philosopher versus a scientist. If you look at the difference in those fundamental ways of understanding, I guess it would be excuse me, the philosopher would most certainly be able to reach out into those faraway galaxies, if only in principle limited by human understanding, of course, versus the scientists who may want to, at first sight, have empirical data to support the understanding that is being premised. Someone who thinks purely as a scientist may find themselves limited in what they believe to be the potentials of reality unless they can reach out into the outer branches of whatever their calculus is. But yes, thank you for allowing me to project, where I am in this conversation. It's Adeshina, by the way, and any feedback on what you guys think about how I guess the understanding is thus far, given what I've just added to the conversation, where we're going with that. I was just sitting back, just listening to what everybody was saying on the concept.
Yeah, I guess one of my points was just that what is outside the space or space-time or our universe, we don't know if it's spaceless or timeless, or exactly what it is. If there is, we don't know if it all came out of energy or some other or another universe, or like I say, energy or what.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people. Sorry, Jason, were you done?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who are in the unfortunate position of bias against anything that is beyond space and time. They're biased against that, maybe because they're atheist, which isn't to say that all atheists have that bias. I don't think Sean Carroll has it, luckily for him, and a lot of scientists, don't have it. But scientists aren't afraid of running into God. Not that they believe that they have, for the most part, but I don't think scientists are ashamed that the conclusion might be that there is some consciousness behind the universe. So backing away or recoiling from anything with theological implications is going to leave you behind, especially as physics evolves over the next decade.
I would also venture to say the locking of oneself into a principle, leaving no gray area of understanding, may be haphazardous to the overall view of understanding the universe and man's place in it.
Hey guys, this conversation has been awesome. I gotta go feed my daughter some breakfast, and hopefully this room's still going when I.
Yeah, thank you.
Good day, brother.
Thanks, Biscuit.
Thank you. So apart from design arguments, is there any other interesting topic on atheism versus theism? Does anyone want to speak about what convinced them to be
similar in Colossians 3, doesn't he?
Them to be an atheist?
What's he say in verse 5? He says, mortify. You're hearing yourself?
Yeah.
And I got my
Well, I
headphones
mean,
in. After the flesh?
to me, I mean, like I say, depending on how you define atheist. So, I mean, my position is just I don't believe a God exists. I don't believe no God exists.
So if you read it very closely, in the spirit is different than after the spirit. So he's saying, let me rewind it again. Let's get this right. It's working a little slow. In the spirit. Yeah. You can be in the spirit and walk after the flesh. So if you read it very closely, in the spirit is different than after the spirit. In the flesh is different than after the spirit. Matthias? So there's a big difference there. So Matthias, I think that we should go to that scripture that you're referring to after we read this one. And we'll see if you're correct, okay?
Did you rewind it? I thought it.
That means no God exists. I was just saying that we don't know enough to say what's beyond or before this universe was spaceless, timeless, and so on. And we don't have evidence to say that.
Yes, I agree. I think most of the problem is evidence. Like even Sean Carroll, if he actually saw supernatural events happening that he couldn't explain, and then maybe God came and spoke to us that I'm actually the one who did all these things, I don't think he's gonna continue insisting that he has to be able to fit that into his natural worldview. So I think that many of them would change their minds. It's just that it doesn't appear to be that there's anything apart from natural things.
Jane, or how long have you guys been on Clubhouse? I've been using Clubhouse.
Roughly about a year. I had joined and left for a little bit and reactivated my account. So yeah, I came from Discord. I still go to Discord and go on the SE server and other servers that I have good conversations on.
Yeah.
I was.
I think Darth might have blocked me.
Oh, really?
Has Dawkins been on lately?
No, yeah, he has. Yeah, he blocked me, and I asked him to unblock me because some of the rooms that he bounces in and out of, I kind of wanted to hear the replays on. And so when you get blocked by somebody and they're in that room, you can't listen to the replay. So I was lucky enough to have a civil enough conversation with him to get unblocked.
I was gonna say, so if you click on me, does it show, like, can't you tell if you click on my icon, if I'm blocked, if you're following him, it will show like something around my icon?
No, the way you can tell if he blocked you is you try to message him. You can't send him a message unless you're in a room with him already. Then you can message him.
But he's not like, if I'm not following him, he won't come up. If I search for him, will he? I don't know.
Yeah, you can still find him. and click on it, but I don't think you'll be allowed to send him a message if he's got you blocked. If you're not blocked, you could be able to send him a message.
What else do we want to talk about now?
Somebody asked if the word physical could be defined in the side messenger.
Oh, the word physical. There's always been a problem with that. Okay.
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Physical is anything that exists up to the third dimensional level of perspective that exists in both space and time. That is physical.
I guess my only question for that would be the word exist. Because I think the word exist can have different usages. Or, I mean, does have different usages.
All right. So in relation to existing on a plane up to the third dimension, some might argue the fourth dimension, but we don't clearly understand that principle quite yet. That is the time principle, I think. But existence, the rock exists. That's outside in your yard. You can pick it up, you can throw it. It exists. It is physical. Yeah, a squid exists. We know that. We know atomic energy exists. We know that, what do they call those? The smaller unit that they found at the Hadron Collider, the quarks. We know quarks are physical, kind of. That's where the idea of principle of physical starts to break down on a molecular structure. The more finite one tries to break a physical atom down, the more theoretical and in principle, the less existence that theory well, if you say something exists only in theory, then does it exist in exactly? So the idea of existing is a very gray area. I think to exist on a physical plane, the opportunity of physical evidence is always nice to have. If only in principle first, then the scientists must do due diligence to support that theory. But that theory exists, but only in human consciousness. So you can exist in consciousness, you may be able to exist on a physical plane. But as long as, if consciousness were to end, then that physical consciousness will still continue. To exist.
Wait, so you mean if you're unconscious, your physical state still exists? Is that what you're saying?
Well, so let's assume that a person died.
Yeah.
And the dead person is
and it's good for child rearing. You have the father that goes out and works the job and makes the money.
gudbayna laakiin haddaanan diyaar ahayn sideebaad meel u qabanaysaa
Mr. Easy Jet, relax, chill. Man,
Egg. Now he mentioned kids. You know, there are some guys out here, including myself, who don't actually want kids. By all means, we can actually be 40, 50 and be single, and we don't care. So for the brother that came up earlier, was it Ricardo, who said, "Oh, if you're not feeling a woman, if you don't want kids, you're gay." No, you're not.
No, if you don't,
you can literally be single.
Let me respond to
Wait, you're saying you don't want
Let him finish.
You
1
don't wanna
second, guys.
yeah, let him finish.
So yeah, so all I'm saying is there are people out here. When you're getting married, everyone has their reason to why they want to do it. So there are a lot of guys like me who don't actually want to have any kids, and people like me can actually be single forever. And that don't mean we're gonna go out there and commit sin. And no, we don't have to.
Terry, that's
wait, dareen ma haysan walaal. Do you not have dareen walaal? Ilaahay ku dheeri.
dareenka dumarkaa loogu talagalay dareenka dumarkaa loogu talagalay
No, akhi, man, listen, man.
Oh, where's that room I've just been in? I'll leave it there then. Let's see what Watchman E's up to.
I couldn't let that go. Okay.
All right. But if you be led of the Spirit, you're not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, Sonny. The works of the flesh are manifest. Which are these? Adultery. I'm just reading through a little bit. So, as the wrath of God will come on you. So that's how we know it.
After the Spirit, when we are in the Spirit.
Check Bella. All right.
Is that just her struggling to think of something to say?
Yeah. Yeah, she goes, no, she ain't even trying to think of nothing. That's what she means to do.
All right.
She's gotten better. Now she's like, check 1, 2, check 1, 2.
I don't hear it anymore.
Professional.
Yeah,
okay,
it's gone now.
It's just a thing. I hope I'm not pixelated or anything. Living in the flesh, right? As a held belief by the dispensationalist, free gracers, and faith aloners, that we're under the gospel of grace, which means we can sin and go to heaven. Okay? No, that gospel doesn't exist. That is a lie. That is the lie that the serpent told in the garden.
Bill has never specifically stated that implicitly or explicitly. I've actually asked him this question. I knew what the answer would be, you know. He doesn't abuse grace. Do you sin, Darrell? I'm sure you do now and again. I'm not trying to do a two-quack-way fallacy. You too, you know. And I don't believe faith is alone. Never is. Never has been. Faith without works is dead. wonder what Jefferson.
This is called the incense waterfall burner. I have never
make it the case that the not God world is in fact not the accurate one. And yet here Darth is saying that quote from Kai Nielsen and then demanding an argument for a not God world.
Was I in that listening to Darth?
I don't want to hear about how people's reasonings for God have failed. What I want to hear is, what is your evidence that there is no God, that you're in a not God world?
I understand the question. When I said go ahead and interrupt me, it's because there were three things I wanted to mention, and I certainly wanted you to feel comfortable.
I want to hear the evidence for the not God world. Can you give it to me right now, please?
Yes, I can. So the first category was the world exists. How do you explain that? The second category was personal experience, which I do think benefits explanation. The third category is specifically for Christianity. The Bible is really clear. The Bible doesn't say, well, there's probably some kind of creator God. The Bible has a specific rendition of God's goals in creation and God's plan for salvation and how that plan has been executed.
Hogtie, this is all extraneous. You're not giving me evidence. You're not giving me, even if you were to demonstrate to some people's satisfaction that the Bible is as historically as real as a comic book. Okay, that's besides the point. What is the evidence that there is no God?
Yeah. I think
let me do this then. Okay, so there is evidence that needs to be explained, and I'm saying that on examination of that evidence, when I see that none of those three categories I mentioned, except for the Bible itself, are dispositive or discriminative, right? To say that, well, the world exists, therefore the Christian God is real, is absolutely a non sequitur. Because we're
not talking about right now. Okay, you see, you need to focus. You need to answer the question. All I'm hearing is a lot of Charlie Brown's teacher. What is the evidence that the not God world is true?
Okay, well, if you aren't listening to what I'm saying, then I don't.
No, I'm listening very carefully.
Okay,
but I'm not hearing a clear and concise, direct answer to my question.
Okay, because as I said at the opening, there is a diversity of claims about possible supernatural explanations, and each of those supernatural claims is well connected to a naturalistic explanation. And I can give you an example if you want. I don't want to do it now because
it doesn't follow that other people's reasonings are wrong. What I want you to do is, are you able, in your rejection of the God world, are you able to establish that it is the case that there's any universal?
Sorry, you explain that point. What do you mean that there's any universal?
A universal. Well, your not God world is a universal. I'm still waiting. I'm hearing a lot of verbiage, but I'm not hearing a clear answer. What is the evidence? You said you require evidence to believe in the God world. I want to see if you follow that criterion. I'm not getting a clear answer. What is the evidence that the not God world is true?
Okay, so now I'm just for the moment, okay, I don't need you to interrupt, okay? I am giving you, right, my justification, which I said right at the front. I don't know.
No, I want evidence. What is the evidence for the not God world?
Just hold on. Argument is a type of evidence. There's physical evidence.
Okay, good. What is the evidence that God does not exist? Is it because God does not exist because people's reasonings for God have failed? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Is that a good way of putting it? It's not a totally unfair way to put it.
Sir, is that your evidence that God does not exist because those who invoke God, their reasonings for God have failed?
No, that's not a complete rendition, but I think you're on the right track. So what I'm saying is...
Sir, I need a clear answer here, okay?
Well,
God does not exist because people's reasonings for God have failed, so that's not your reasoning. Okay.
Well, no.
Now, see what Darth is trying to do. Darth's trying to take his reasons and then try to throw it into some kind of deductive argument. There's nothing wrong with reaching the conclusion inductively that if you're exposed... This is something that he would bring up. Darth would ask Dr. Bowen his reasons for not being a believer, why he deconverted or deconstructed or whatever. And for him, it was because of his exposure to comparative religions, right? I mean, he studies ancient Near Eastern religions. He got into the history of that. And he started realizing some of the stuff, some of these things that he took for granted as being only found in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, whatever, were actually concepts that were in these other religions from the same region, same culture, predated it. And you can see the same kinds of like good points and bad points, and that was enough, right? That led him away to it. He's like, you can see this over and over again, and the more often you're exposed to this when you're looking at different religions, these stories kind of succeed or fail, but it leads you to the conclusion that these faith traditions are nothing more than just faith traditions, but they might not reflect an actual state of affairs that a supernatural being or beings exists. And this isn't controversial for somebody like Darth. There are plenty of people who are devout Hindus that Darth would disagree with, even though those devout Hindus believe in the existence of multiple gods. So I always think it's a little weird when he tries to go into this kind of thing, because this is how bad I think his thing has gotten, right? One of the key aspects of being able to understand or relate to this notion that our minds are dependent, which is where this started, is understanding that the nature of God's mind is one of reason and logic and all this other kind of stuff, right? But for whatever reason, it seems like deductive logic is holy and inductive logic is sinful or somehow wanting because it's probabilistic. There's something odd about this, because this is when I start thinking that Darth Dawkins might think that deductive logic is some kind of spell. Because you can prove, because you have valid, there's inference rules, and those are truth preserving. If you stick anything in there, then you get this thing that if it's true, then it's definitely true kind of thing. And then he just goes ahead and runs with it. Well, that argument is valid and sound, as he often will say. As if constructing it correctly will make it true. But that's not, and that's reflective of the mind of God, right? Like, well, then it kind of sounds like all God had to do was tie into this mystical thing called logic that existed somewhere, and then just word things in a particular way, and make sure that they follow the divine metaphysics of logic that are responsible for creating the universe, and then, boom, everything's so. It sounds like God presupposes logic in order to get this logical stuff to occur. Just a thing to think about. But yeah, when he's doing this with Hogtie, this is a way to implicitly just reject the notion of implicit logic, or not implicit logic, of inductive reasoning. And the only thing that I think that they do that for is because a lot of these precepts, a lot of apologists seem to think that inductive reasoning's not as good as deductive, because with deductive you get certain truth, and that's not the case. That's not really the case. Anyway. Oh, and House of Comments. I blocked him because he used keck in a comment. Call me petty, but I can tolerate a lot of different viewpoints. But if somebody comes in here trafficking with 10-year-old Reddit shit-posting meme lord, ironic fascist nonsense, even if if it's winking, especially if it's winking, ironic Reddit shit lord meme posting crap from Reddit fascists, that person will get banned. I have zero patience for that shit. None. If you come in here doing keck or any of that kind of fucking crap, trafficking in any of that weird, right-wing Reddit basement bullshit, you will be gone. So there's enough right-wing horse shit in this country as it is. Ironic Nazis are even worse, right? There's nothing worse than somebody who wants to stomp people into the ground for a dopamine hit while wearing a brony t-shirt. Fucked up.
What then? Okay.
Not my belief at all. That
okay, good. Then I no longer want to hear about other people's reasonings for God, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I don't want to hear about other people's thinking. I want to know from you why the not God mind is true. I want you to, you see, you're doing what you've always done going back to your Google Plus days. You're doing your best interpretation of Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah. You're not giving me a clear answer. What is your rational justification for the not God world?
Because there is a sensible, naturalistic explanation that explains both the physical world.
It doesn't follow that you have an explanation that it's true.
Renderings of God.
No, sir, because you have an explanation, it doesn't follow from it that it's true. I have an explanation for the God. Okay, I have an explanation for the God world, but you don't accept that explanation. Giving an explanation about
keck is offensive to me, mostly because of its associations with the shittier aspects of alt-right crap from online stuff. Some people just think keck is just like an alternate form of lol or haha or something like that. It isn't. Look up its origins, what it got weaponized into. If I see that, or Peppy the Frog, or any of that tired ass Reddit horse shit, I'm banning you. We don't even have to get into an ideological conversation about it. That's just some tired ass shit. It doesn't belong here. I don't want that stuff in my live chat. That shit was old 2 minutes after it started coming out. And anybody that traffics in it will get banned. So learn your alt-right terms, learn to identify your Kekistani types, your Pepe bros, your alt-right shit-posting meme lord stuff. Don't traffic in that crap.
How the natural world could be is not a rational justification that it is.
So when you say in Taylor doesn't follow, do you mean like deductively? Is that what you mean? I'm gonna have to agree with you.
That okay, good. So you can't inductively show that God doesn't exist.
Oh no,
right?
Yeah, that is that is the.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when House of Comments was using CAC in the comment here, he wasn't referring to World of Warcraft. I know that that's what it refers back to, but it's most common history when it comes up in stuff like this, especially for like alt-right Christian types, is that shit.
Type of reasoning, you're getting closer there, yeah.
Okay, so you don't have any inductive or deductive case that God doesn't exist, do you?
No, inductive, yes. I don't have a deductive case. I mean, I heard
induction doesn't lead you to logically necessary.
Has it? How? How has Pepe been reclaimed by the online left? I mean, something must have really changed. I mean, you were still seeing those things at like alt-right rallies and shit. So, all right.
Conclusions.
Right, yeah. No.
Okay. So the point is, inductively, you could never show that God doesn't exist.
Hold on. Inductively, I could never. Sorry, did you say deductively or inductively?
Inductively.
Well, when you say, yes, you can. You can show things to be the case.
Okay, good. Show me inductively. Show me right now inductively how there is no God.
Okay. So yeah, we were talking about like follow inductively. That provides a justification, but we both acknowledge that doesn't logically entail it's necessary.
Okay. Can you show me inductively how God doesn't exist?
Okay. Yes, there are some gods that you and I would both agree deductively.
Sir, can you show me inductively how there is no supreme being and creator?
Inductively?
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not an expert on all these philosophical debates. I have been learning stuff, reading up, and I know I watched Tom Rabbit's stream for a short, like 10 or 15 minutes, and from what I could see and comprehend of the comments in there, they were all accusations against Darth Dawkins, and I'm not white knighting for him. He doesn't need it. All the comments were against Darth Dawkins, and I genuinely believed and comprehended that all those accusations that they were making against him would have been more properly levelled at Hogtie. Darth was extremely patient with that guy in there. I've seen him in discussion, if you can call it that, with Hogtie 2 or 3 times, and I don't think either of those conversations went well, but I do know that Darth doesn't deserve the accusations levelled at him.
So there's a whole host of propositions for what gods might be. Any of them I say.
Okay, stop. You know what? You should be a used car salesman.
Okay. So we're going to
listen to me carefully. Listen to me carefully. No, because the whole time I've been asking you here, you've been giving me this rambling discourse, which is all over the page.
Telling you my
Please don't overtalk me. Please don't overtalk me. Okay? Now, we're talking about God as defined minimalistically, where God is the creator, the supreme being who is the creator, who may or may not have additional properties. Now, what we're talking about is the creator-creature distinction. Your position is that the creator-creature distinction is false. So far, in the last 20 minutes, you have not given me a clear, rational defense that is understandable and intelligible as to why God as creator does not exist. Okay? I'm still waiting for that.
Okay. So now so you said minimal. You had minimal rendering of God.
God does not exist because.
Oh, I don't know the cause of God not existing. Is that what you're asking for? Like, what cause?
I want your evidentiary support, your rational justification as to why there is no God.
Okay. Well,
the issue is not the issue. Well, first of all, that's a category error to say the cause of why God doesn't exist. Okay.
I just try to interpret your question. That's all.
Yeah. So now, I'm still waiting. We're 20 minutes into this. I would like a rational justification why there is no creator God. Can you please give me one?
Can I? I might be able to. Then we're talking about an inductive.
Well, I've been asking the same question for 20 minutes.
For 20 minutes. It's been about 8 minutes, but okay. If you want to say that. Yeah, I can give you my actual, honestly possessed justification, which of course you won't agree with, and that's fine. Do you?
I'm waiting.
Now, yeah.
You're bloviating.
I'm not.
I'm actually surprised Hogtie didn't blow his top right there. Like, he's a better person than I am. I mean, this is some childish bullshit. I mean, and this is how far you're going to get with somebody like Darth, right? He asks for reasons, you give your reasons, then he starts implicitly turning that into you haven't provided him with an argument that's valid enough to throw him off, right? To satisfy him, which isn't what he asked you for. He just wanted to know what your reasons were. Then he switches the tactic on you without warning. And now he's still asking the same thing, and then instead of actually letting Hogtie finish his explanation, now he's pretending, oh, I'm just bored, right? At this point, it becomes pretty clear for Darth the only thing that he wants what he wants is somebody to throw slogans at him, right? He wants a quick, pithy, meme-length kind of retort, right, that will trigger him. He just wants to have the kind of conversation that he sees in a news bit between ads on Fox News or something. Although I have a feeling that Fox News is probably a little too left-wing for Darth.
I'm not even talking. You're
the same old Hogtie that you are in Google Plus. You're doing the same old rhetorical gymnastics here. What is the rational justification that there is no God?
This is what he does. Do you want to hear it or not?
I was in there. I heard Darth ask him the same question very patiently at least 8 or 9 times, if not slightly more. Definitely not less. I was actually in there listening, recording it.
All the time in the world to respond to it. Hey, listen. My patience with your disingenuousness is running out. I want you to tell me why there is no God. If I hear you over talking me again, I'm kicking you from the room.
Yeah, Darth has been over-talking him for the entire time, right? It's like he's repeatedly over-talked Hogtie every time Hogtie has...
Seriously, I'm not trying to white knight for Darth. As I said earlier, he doesn't need it. Certainly not from me. But if you want to get your point across or be more annoying, just don't interrupt him. Let him finish what he's saying. He'll let you finish what you're saying. And, you know, if you keep interrupting him, you know what's going to happen. Disingenuity much, yeah.
Started to get into an explanation. I mean, when you start making snoring noises when someone's in the middle of an explanation, does that count as over-talking? I guess it doesn't, since you're just making rude noises. I mean, how old is Darth, really?
Understand? Okay, I have been waiting for quite a while now, and you haven't given me a direct answer. All I've been getting is bloviating. I want to know why there is no creator God.
Okay. So now it's my turn?
I'm waiting.
Okay, so you are actually waiting. And by the way, your false accusation that I'm lying is not acceptable, but here we are. So, again, I gave you my justification, and you pointed out quite rightly that it is not like...
Okay, I want you to stop with the bullshit, okay?
Good Lord. Darth got so angry at Hogtie Champ that he broke his mic. He broke his mic. I'm like, way to go, Hogtie. You really got something out of him there.
You are an effing bullshitter, okay? I didn't ask you for an analysis of what before. I want you to tell me right now, what is the rational justification that there is no creator God? Go.
I have no deductive argument that there's no creative God anywhere. My inductive...
Which is fair. So I'm glad, Hogtie's... I don't have a deductive argument. What did Darth ask again? I want a rational explanation. A rational explanation would be an appeal to inductive logic. when you start talking about those other stories that exist out there, that like we've seen all these other religions try to make these same kinds of claims about a god or multiple gods doing this and answering prayers and responding to sacrifices and changing the weather and changing fortunes to good or to bad and all this other kind of stuff. And then it turns out it was something else. It was incidental, or it was, there were perfectly natural explanations for it. Maybe that God is working within the confines of nature, but there's lots of different reasons why you can believe that. You don't think that that's actually true. Doesn't mean you have to present this is the worst thing about this. That this is where House of Commons was going with this thing. Like, you need to be prepared to defend your worldview. Darth needs to be prepared to accept the reasons a person has for their worldview and not pivot to, well, your reasons don't make for a good deductive argument, and until they do, I can dismiss you as a completely irrational person. That is fallacious thinking. That makes no fucking sense at all.
The argument is, of every god that I've been told about, the evidence that supports that god has a better, more coherent and sensible explanation.
That's local atheism, my friend. That's a bait and switch. Okay, that's local atheism. Okay, P.Z. Myers, listen to me carefully. Do you know who P.Z. Myers is?
I do.
Okay, P.Z. Myers tried that out. Okay, you're going from global atheism to local atheism. Now, telling me that every God concept that has presented to you so far is unsatisfactory. Okay, it doesn't follow from the fact that all of the rationales for these various God concepts are unsatisfactory to you. It doesn't follow from that there is no creator God. You told me.
Right. And so Darth is asking for an argument. He's saying reasons, but he's asking for an argument. What if you provided him an argument and he's like, no, that's not a good argument? Well, it might be the case that all arguments for a not God world fail. Doesn't mean that a not God world's not true. You just throw that right back at him. I can't believe how the level of self, like he's right there with with that Kai Nielsen quote, right? He can apply that to his side of things, but because Kai Nielsen worded it that way, it only applies to people breaking down arguments for God. Like, no. Kai Nielsen said that just because none of those arguments might work doesn't mean that God's not real. Cool, dude.
What do you mean?
That the reason.
Not that I'm aware of. You either did or you didn't. If you didn't, you would know that you didn't. If you did, you would certainly know that you did. The answer to get back from her, when asking a very clear question, did you hide or delete one of my comments? Simple enough. Not that I'm aware of.
And the reason for that, why it's rational, is because it would work the other way as well. You can't turn around and say, well, you can't provide me with an argument for the not God world, therefore it can't be the case. He's making the assumption he's making the mistake that he's projecting onto Hogtie. It's incredible. Like he's literally begging for Hogtie.
Yeah, it was done the other way around now, wasn't it? The same thing was done about Darth in Tom Rabbit's channel. Everybody commenting that's in the peanut gallery on Tom Rabbit's channel. I think it was concerning this video, this debate, or it was just after. And all those accusations could easily have been levelled, should have been levelled, at Hogtied Champ. It's not a champ at all.
To give him an argument so he can tell him that the argument doesn't work, therefore there is the not God world is not possible. Like, please give me an argument so that I can commit the fallacy I'm accusing you of. It's really stunning. And there's absolutely no reason for this. Provide, all this animosity here, and they're only talking about the possibility of a God existing. We haven't even talked about whether or not it's worthy of worship.
You need a rational justification for a worldview. And in the absence of that rational justification, you dismiss it. Now, what is the rational justification for global atheism, not local atheism? Go ahead.
Okay, I'll do that. Can you just tell me, I want to know local and global. What does that refer to?
Global atheism is there are no gods whatsoever. More specifically, there is no creator, supreme being, creator God. Local atheism is 1, 2, 3, 5. How many gods are presented to me locally? The reasons for those are unsatisfactory for me to believe in. That's called local atheism. Okay. We're not discussing local atheism. You are defending global atheism. Now, I want to hear out of your mouth The rational justification why there is no supreme being, creator God.
And if you wanted to defend global atheism, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's entry on atheism and agnosticism, global atheism can be the stance that there exist no entities worthy of worship. Done.
Okay, gotcha. I understand. And that is what I thought you meant by local. And we are talking about local because I'm saying that I gave you a justification for local atheism. And
I want to hear your rationale for global atheism. Would you please give it?
Okay. As I said, I do not think that global atheism is supported by a deductive argument. And I said that right from the beginning.
Do you have a rational justification at all for global atheism?
Yes.
What is it? What is it? Is the conclusion logically necessary?
No, definitely not.
Okay, okay. So what is the inductive rationale that there is no God?
Well, I'll say again, it's because when presented with a wide array of potential supernatural explanations for the things
you are diverting again to local atheism.
No, that's literally the straight up answer. That's
listen to me. The fact that locally presented God. Okay, you know what?
Tell me why my answer.
I'm going to tell you again. My patience is really running out with you.
You don't have any patience.
You haven't changed one iota since the Google Plus day. Okay. You can. Okay, you're gone. You're gone. Same old dog. Hit the road. Okay. You see, this is what we're left with, folks. This guy is a pathological liar while pretending not to be. Okay? He has the gift of gab, but did anybody hear a clear, succinct, circumspect rationale that the...
I mean, it's not surprising, is it, Hogtie, that, he doesn't understand what induction is, other than that it must be bad, because it's not deductive logic, so therefore it's just this low-rent, cross-eyed cousin of deductive logic, therefore, it needs to be cast out. Yeah, just awful. But props to you, Hogtie, for getting him to kind of hit on all of his main, all of his main weaknesses.
The not God world is true, other than him going, well, all of the God claims that people bring to me so far, they're unsatisfactory.
No, I didn't hear that, Doug. And I didn't even know he was on even...
Now,
what you say?
Lest anybody thinks that I am being too tough on Hogtie, this is the same bullshit that he shoveled out many years ago and thereafter on Google Plus Day and on Discord. It's the same old crap with this guy. He will bloviate you until your eyes glaze over and you pass out from lack of sleep.
Well, I must have...
He didn't answer the question, okay?
I wish Daddy Clee would just...
He said he had no deductive argument or rational justification, but that he establishes...
He didn't say he didn't have a rational justification. At least I don't think he did. Hogtie, did you actually say during this that you didn't have a rational justification? I know you said you didn't have a deductive argument. But now it sounds like Darth is saying that those are one and the same.
The not God world inductively. Okay, how do you do that? Oh, well, all of the gods that people have presented to me are unsatisfactory, and I just find the naturalism more appealing. Simply accepting a naturalistic explanation is more appealing, okay, or parsimonious, which Occam's razor doesn't even apply here. It doesn't get you to the necessary conclusion that there's no God. So my point is this.
The necessary conclusion? So again, what he's looking for is an argument for the impossibility of God. It has to be necessary that the not God world is the case. So again, he's not asking for a person's reasons. This is how confused this guy has gotten with all this stuff. He's been doing this for so long and conflating and mixing and matching all these kinds of terms that I don't think this is redeemable anymore. He probably, I would suggest he scrap this and try to go back to the drawing board, but this is such a habit now. He's not going to be able to reverse course.
He is suppressing the truth and unrighteousness because, number one, he admitted he's operating from autonomous reasoning, and he completely is violating the very criterion of belief that he uses to dismiss the God world.
How is he doing that?
Completely abandons it when he adopts the not God world.
No, he doesn't. This is the fucked up thing. This is the worst projection of Darth's view onto somebody else. In Darth's worldview, deductive logic seems to be the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that can show necessity, and it's the only thing that's certainly true, and therefore an appeal to something like inductive logic, other kinds of logic would be somehow that's just a cop out, right? That's not going to get you there. If you don't have a deductive argument, he said it himself. He thinks that Hogtie admitted that he didn't have a deductive argument or a rational justification for it, right? But he basically said he doesn't have a deductive argument, therefore no rational justification for it. But Hogtie, several times he said, yes, I have a justification. Yep. But Darth couldn't accept it because he doesn't. I don't know what this is. I don't know what's happened to him. Where the only way, like, if you had to provide your reasons, do you have to provide a deductive syllogism to justify your reasons for liking a particular flavor of ice cream? I mean, granted that we're talking about something like preference and subjective, all that kind of stuff. So it's not slightly fair. But seriously, I mean, what the hell? Right? And one of the things that you could do with it, well, how do you know that Rocky Road is your favorite ice cream? Well, because of all the other ice creams that I've tried, this one is the one that, I think is the most delicious. This is the one I prefer. Yeah, but isn't it possible that there's another flavor of ice cream out there that's better than Rocky Road? Sure, it's possible. But you asked me what my reasons were for preferring this one. And my reasons for preferring this one is that out of all the ones that I've tried, this one's the best. It doesn't mean that there isn't something better out there. It also doesn't mean that there is anything better. Rocky Road might actually be your favorite. You could try another 50 flavors, in your life. You could try all the flavors of ice cream, all of them possible. God shows up with the angels of Baskin-Robbins and presents every conceivable flavor of ice cream in the history of in the possibility of the universe. And Rocky Road's still number one.
Because he doesn't have a rational justification. Okay? Invoking that various God concepts are unsatisfactory is not a rational justification that there's no God. Kai Nielsen, the famous atheist author, stated all of the reasons for God might fail, but it still may be the case that God exists. This is the guy who wrote the atheist entry for the Encyclopedia Britannica. I think Britannica thinks he knows a little bit about atheism. Appealing to people's faulty reasonings about what is ultimate, it doesn't follow from that it's faulty, that therefore their conclusion, the conclusion is false. It may be that their reasonings to the conclusion are incorrect. But you see, how patient was I with him, Tonlock? See, Tonlock has witnessed me dealing with Hogtie Champ many moons ago on Google+. How patient was I with him? Are you there, Tonlock?
Can I say something, Doug?
He actually, of all the rhetorical questions that he asks, he needed Tone to where's my buddy to reaffirm me? Oh my God, that's
sure. Go ahead, anyone can.
Yeah, I didn't even know he was. Okay. You had experience with him on Google Plus.
I wasn't aware. Experience with this guy.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Go, Tom.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he wasn't getting to the point. He just wasn't. And you were talking to him for about 15, 20 minutes altogether, I think. Maybe a little longer. Mm-hmm. He just didn't really get to the point also.
No, he was doing his best impersonation of Matt Dillabloviator.
Yeah, you were patient, Doug. I'll give you that, yeah. I just didn't hear it. And
the fact that people's reasoning for God are unsatisfactory, it doesn't follow necessarily from that the ground of all being is not a mind, meaning God. And you see, the reason why I can say categorically that he's a prime example of suppressing the truth and unrighteousness is because just about everybody listening, including myself, it was very obviously he was just being a chatterbox. He was just being...
Hogtie was being the chatterbox. Hogtie was being the chatterbox. Look,
he was being an idiot.
Hogtie asked him if he would allow him some time to fully explain his reasons. And Darth said yes. Darth was going to give him, and then Darth continued to interrupt him and then act impatient because he wasn't getting his answer fast enough. He never really, the more you do that, the more you interrupt somebody and then force them to start over again. Yeah, it's going to sound like, they're you're just never getting to the point. Well, that happens when you never allow them to get to the point. If you shut up and let them finish their statement, let them run it out, then you don't have to keep asking them to repeat themselves. It might have taken a little less time.
Yeah, Chatty Cathy. Blah 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 blah. Was he specifically responding to my question? No, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't. I'm trying to be
He had
nice.
no evidentiary support. His evidentiary support is, well, all of these reasons people tell me for God are unsatisfactory. Well, that's not evidentiary support of the universal that you're in a not God world. And all he's just simply saying is, well, their rationales are unappealing to me or unsatisfactory, and naturalism is appealing to me. It doesn't follow from that you find it appealing. Or that to you it makes more sense. That's not a rational justification.
Yeah, and that wasn't that again. That can be a rational justification, but it wouldn't be a deductive one, and that wasn't the point Pongtai was trying to bring up. But you kept Darth kept flipping out over the whole. No, this can't possibly work. You can't just say that just because other people's religions get it wrong, and so many religions get it wrong, that there therefore is no God. That's not what he said. He said, because so many religions get it wrong, I'm not inclined to believe, right? I mean, I'm paraphrasing, loosely there, but that's sort of Hogtie's reasons. We have all these other explanations. There's like, I'm inclined to believe that these are stories, but I don't know that they really represent. There's so many of them, they can't all be true, but they can all be false, to, rip off a common Matt Dillahunty statement. But of course, because I'm not putting that in a deductive argument, I guess it must just, from the jump be false. So there you had it. There was the first one. That one is just the kind of classic, God must exist because you can think kind of argument, I think, from Darth Dawkins, right? He wants to know what the justification is for a not God world. He wants an argument for it, even though he constantly brings up Kai Nielsen, and it just seems to me like the fastest way to turn that around on him is just to point out that, like, even if I provided you with a great argument for the rationality, or you don't even that's not even what he's looking for. He's not looking for the rationality of a not God world. That can be shown, right? Hogtie did that. Those were his reasons. But if you're providing a kind of argument for it, whether it's inductive or deductive, Darth is just going to say, well, just because you're providing that argument doesn't mean that there isn't a God. Right. But you asked me for an argument, right? And I can also say that just because my argument for a not God world fails, it doesn't necessarily mean that the not God world isn't the actual state of affairs. Kai Nielsen, bitch. That's really all you have to do. So that was just dealing with, like, and Darth got nowhere with anyone there. In fact, I actually think he probably pulled some people away from thinking that there's a God. And now he's gotten into the realm of, we never got to the point of whether or not that God is Jesus, whether it saves, whether you should believe in it or pray to it or any of that kind of stuff. That comes next. So, kick that out of there. Here we go. So this is the next one. With this one, this is the one that's still currently unlisted. Oh, and by the way, welcome, Doubting Thomas. Thanks for joining us. And I want to read this comment before I move on here. Hogtie writes, Didi insists that you answer in one sentence and flesh out a full deductive argument referring to every bit of supporting evidence, but then won't let you say one sentence. Right. And then calls you a chatterbox. And then his evidence of you being a quote-unquote chatterbox is how many times you have to restart your explanation because he keeps asking you the same question and never lets you finish the answer. Not even once. So like, the biggest waste of time, the common denominator is Darth. And the over-talking is, if Hogtie is a chatterbox, then I don't know what that makes Darth Dawkins, because I'm pretty sure if you were to do a word counter of that entire exchange, Darth Dawkins is easily talking, is constantly talking over Hogtie. Constantly.
No, I don't.
Like, I love that, like, if somebody has a decent vocabulary and
I was actually in that room. I don't think he was over talking Hogtie all the time. Hogtie was being evasive. That much was obvious to me. It seemed so. Watch the thingy. I don't know if the recording's still on there on Clubhouse.
And sets up a lengthy explanation and tries to map out exactly what they're trying to give Darth, what it seems like Darth is asking for. And it takes more than 30 seconds to get through. That's when Darth starts acting up and throwing a temper tantrum and making animal noises and, and flipping out, right? Like, that's not what he's actually looking for, right? He's looking for a dopamine hit. He wants something reactive, something pithy that he can go up against. He just wants a slogan. As much as he complains about atheist cliches, I think that's all he's actually fishing for. He wants an atheist cliche that he can, rage mic at. So, this one is a conversation. Jay Robbins started this one, and this was from May 1st, so yeah, about a week ago. When he pulled this one up, I was listening while I was at work, and this popped up, and I was surprised that it showed up because of my history of being blocked by these guys. When it popped up, it was about 11, I don't know, it was right around lunchtime.
Okay. I'm not hearing evidence for the not God world.
Maybe somebody with a particularly radicalized Sunday school knows that, but I don't know that the majority of people are really acquainted with that particular take. And every time these guys bring it up, lots of people start throwing up question marks and like raised eyebrows, like, "What in the hell are you talking about? You mind diving into that a little deep, maybe flushing that out, because sounds like that's raising a lot more questions than it's answering." And they don't. Basically, I think the lesson that you're supposed to take from that is like, God's big and you're little. He's strong and you're weak. He's smart and you're dumb. That kind of thing. And I apologize if that's too dismissive, but when it comes to Darth's view on God, I don't know if I really give it much more credit than that. In fact, I kind of agree with Jim here. Darth's religion is so antiseptic and sterile that I'm amazed anyone finds it appealing. I think the second video actually gets into the appeal, at least for people like Darth, and it's troubling.
And your conception will be autonomous, okay? It operates for whatever reason by itself, not being derivative and dependent upon the autonomous mind of God, or you will reject that notion of your mental autonomy, and your mind will be derivative and dependent under the authority of the autonomous mind of God. It's a true dichotomy.
No, it either is or it isn't, but given his worldview, not necessarily. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, it either is the case we have autonomous minds, or it is not the case that we have autonomous minds, right? The fact that, now he's trying to, no, it is the case. Like, you either believe that your mind is dependent upon God, or you believe your mind is completely independent. That is not a dichotomy. Because your mind could be dependent on something other than God. So he needs to go back to the drawing board on that one, I think. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but that's my take on that. I think he's trying to turn that into he's trying to say it's a dichotomy so he can put Hog Tie in kind of a black and white situation, this kind of binary choice. There's only two options now, buddy. Like, Darth, that's Darth's favorite rhetorical tick.
I agree, yeah.
Okay, so do you recognize then that when you reject God as creator, you are implicitly claiming that your mind and being is autonomous?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I mean...
Okay, so if I can show